What's your creepiest glitch in the Matrix or unexplainable thing that's ever happened to you? Taking the trash out at night, super remote area so I know for a fact we're the only ones around here, getting close to the road and I hear very clearly "help me" from a female voice. Even knowing there's such a slim chance of there being another living person around, I still feel like I should look around and check it out in case I wasn't just hearing things and someone actually needs help. Take about 2 steps in the direction I thought I heard it, hear a giggle in the same exact voice, turn around and walk promptly back up the driveway because fuck that shit. Anyone who actually needed help wouldn't be laughing, I don't think. Edit, this comment is potentially disturbing. For a better time, skip it and head over to r/shore. When I was a child, my sister and I were walking home from the park and a man called help. We found an open manhole and could hear the man calling for help, but we could not see him. I was 9 and panicking thought we should crawl in to help. My sister, 11, had the good instinct to get our parents. When we came back with them, the man was gone. As an adult I can see the whole thing was a ploy, the manhole right next to the park. It makes complete sense but is still so creepy. I was working on my motorcycle in a dirt lot where I had crashed it trying to do a sick drift, breaking off the clutch lever and the gear shifter. I had brought a wrench set with me and I was using one of them to take off a bolt when I put it down on the ground to finish unscrewing the bolt with my hand. 2 minutes later I went to pick it back up and it was gone. I ran all around this dirt lot looking for it to no avail. Luckily I had a spare in the car. Fixed the bike and drove back to my apartment to shower as I was filthy. I walked in my room and sitting on my desk was the wrench. I was dumbfounded. I once clocked out of work at 6 p.m., like I always did at the time, and began my hour-long train ride home. After I had found a seat, I went to sleep and woke up just before my station. From the station, it is a short bus journey, 10 to 15 minutes, to reach home. During the entire journey, I didn't use my phone and I don't wear a watch, so I didn't really notice the time anywhere. When I reached home, my family surprised me with "You're home early, everything all right?" I look at the wall clock and it is about to be 6 p.m. I was too shocked to understand what happened. Checked other watches, cell phones etc. and the time is absolutely right. A few days later, the admin emailed us the timesheets for the month, times clocking in and out, and every single days for me was around the same 6 p.m. So it certainly wasn't me having left work earlier. To this date, I haven't figured out how I gained between 60 to 90 minutes that day. Edit 2, the most common theory in comments seems to be the DST and I have considered it before. The problem is that it should work for both time in and time out, and if I remember the time in was the same as always and I didn't leave my home early for work. If I remember right, it also wasn't a Monday, which is when the clock reset effects come through at work despite the changes going in on Sunday. 1985. My ex-wife and I were sleeping. There was a small sliver of light coming in through the window from a street light, so the room and bed were dimly visible. Our black Pomeranian was at the end of the bed asleep. I dreamt that I woke up, reached down to pet him, and he turned into a glossy black bivalve/oyster thing which opened up to reveal rows of gleaming glass teeth. I woke up to my ex backpedaling up the bed over the pillows towards the wall. I asked what's wrong? She said, "What is that shiny black clam thing with the teeth at the end of the bed? Where's the dog?" We had had the same nightmare at the same time. This still gives me a chill. I've told this story before and could go into a ton of detail, but here's the short version. I am 100% sure I vividly remember a dog that apparently doesn't exist. When I was 16 we lived on the other side of the province and my uncle had this little Jack Russell named Crew. Crew went missing for several months and then turned up at a humane society over an hour away, and we were all shocked this little dog has made it so far. Anyway, that was almost 20 years ago, and the other day I was talking to my parents and was like, whenever I hear about Jack Russells I think about Crew and that stunt he pulled, and they had no idea what I was talking about. insisted my uncle had never had such a dog, I must have dreamed it, etc. Honestly, anyone else who would have remembered this dog has been dead for a long time, and I don't even have any pictures of my uncle. I have absolutely no way to prove this dog existed, but I'm sure that he did. I had just pulled into the parking lot of where I worked and was walking towards the building. It was like 3 in the afternoon, broad daylight. All of a sudden, I heard an ambulance's siren start sounding. Naturally, I looked down the road to try and see the ambulance. I see it approaching and decided to watch it for a bit. It was quickly getting closer, and it was about to pass right by me. However, there was a large SUV waiting to turn out of the parking lot and onto the road, blocking a few meters of the road from my view. The ambulance passed behind the SUV, probably about 50 feet away from me at most, and I vividly remember the siren becoming completely silent in that instant. The ambulance had vanished entirely as it passed behind that SUV. I was so confused. The road did not have many cars on it at the time, and it was broad daylight. I did a triple take and made sure that I didn't just miss it. I had a clear view of the road going both directions, and there was no more ambulance to be seen. No more siren either. I walked up and down the road, trying to find it for a solid minute. But nope, it was gone. I was well rested, not on drugs, and I didn't have a history of hallucinations. It seems dismissible, but I was completely aware of what happened, and I can't explain it to this day. My friend Sarah was in a nightclub, drunk off her face, when she got an overwhelming urge to tell a total stranger that her leg hurts. Edit, it didn't. All a bit strange, she ignores it but it doesn't stop, so she walks up to this guy and says, "I know this is crazy, but I've got a huge urge to tell you my leg hurts." "I know that's crazy, again. Sorry." But he bursts into tears. Turns out his dad had just died and they made a pact before that if there was an afterlife he would get a message to him saying a totally random phrase, so there could be no mistakes, which they decided was "I've hurt my leg." My wife passed away a year ago today. Had some odd things happen, like a couple of old meaningful pictures show up that I swore were in storage. The strangest one was I vacuumed the carpet and as soon as I was done a diamond ring was on the ground right where I had just cleaned. It was like she was saying, "Hey, this one is real, don't lose it." I shared this a few years ago when this question was asked last time, and didn't really realize how glitchy in the matrix it was until people started commenting haha. In college, I took a hard news/soft news journalism class where one of the assignments was to write an obituary for one of my grandparents. The professor told us to write it on a deceased grandparent, but if all of your grandparents were still alive we had to choose one. In my case, all of my grandparents were alive. I procrastinated actually doing the assignment until the night before it was due because it seemed like a morbid assignment, especially once all of my grandparents were still alive. Scramming for an easy grandparent to write about, I gave my mom a call and asked her for some basic biographical information about my maternal grandfather. As we were talking about my grandpa's career, my mom couldn't recall the name of one of the companies he worked at. She lectured me about waiting until the last minute to write the assignment because it was late, 10:30 p.m. my grandpa's time. However, she said she would give him a call to see if he was still awake and be able to answer that question once my assignment was due the following morning. When my mom called my grandpa, my grandma answered the phone in a panic. My grandma frantically explained that the paramedics had just arrived and were performing CPR on my grandpa because he had stopped breathing and lost consciousness. My mom was able to stay on the phone with my grandma until they took my grandpa to the hospital, where he was declared dead. In the time my mom and I had been talking on the phone about my grandpa's obituary, he was dying. His death was entirely unexpected at that. Although he was in his 80s, he was the healthiest of my grandparents at the time. We ended up using the obituary I wrote for that writing assignment as his actual obituary. Still freaks me out when I think about the timing. I've told this on Reddit before, but here it is. I had a very important document that I only ever kept in one place. I kept it in the top drawer of a small filing cabinet. I never moved it and would always see it in that drawer whenever I opened it for whatever reason. The day came that I needed it now and I didn't sweat it because I knew exactly where it was. Well, I'd be damned if it wasn't there. Cue panic attack. I tore that filing cabinet up. I removed everything and spread it out, flipped papers over, dug through envelopes, shook everything out, shined a flashlight all through the emptied cabinet in case it was somehow stuck to the sides. I mean, it was not there. I can assure you no one took it or was messing with me. I was so frustrated. I even looked through other parts of my house. But I knew it wouldn't be in any of those places and it wasn't. I was intermittently going back to that dumb filing cabinet. No luck. Super irritated, I searched the rest of the house again and, on my way back downstairs where my filing cabinet was, I called out in frustration, "Okay. Bring it back." I don't know who I thought I was talking to because I was alone, but you guessed it. I found it in the top drawer of my filing cabinet where it should have been in the first place. I was relieved and totally freaked out. About 2 years ago, I went to collect my husband from the ferry after work. My husband got into the car and as I was driving very slowly out of the car park we both noticed two people standing a few meters in front of our car. It looked as though they were strangers, older-looking professionals, both walking to their separate cars in different areas of the car park. The man was reaching into his side bag and the lady was further ahead than the man, with her head turned to the right. I know the exact positions they were in because they were completely frozen on the spot. My husband and I sat there watching the frozen strangers, not saying anything to each other, and then all of a sudden it was like someone pressed play and the two strangers just continued on like nothing had happened. My husband and I promised to each other that we would never forget how weird the experience was. I can't remember exactly how long they stayed frozen like that, but it was long enough to freak us both out. I think most of the people here have experienced the something falls down and seemingly disappears thing, but the exact opposite happened to me a couple of months ago. Basically me and a bunch of friends were standing in a circle in our school's hallway, when suddenly we heard something fall. We all simultaneously looked at the floor, and there was a small, silver, foreign coin, Swiss I think, just laying there. I picked it up and asked if any of them had dropped it, and they all denied. I looked around and there was nowhere it could have come from, and the hallway was empty, so there was no one who could have thrown it. Later we joked that someone in Switzerland probably dropped it, and is now frantically looking for it. I still have the coin in my locker, so if anyone wants pictures, I can take some when Monday rolls around. Edit. Here are the pictures. From what I've gathered, it's a 20 Rappen coin. I always have weird visions, or I'll see something in a dream, but I won't notice that I've seen it, then like a week or so after I'll see the exact same thing, almost like deja vu, but not quite since it hasn't actually happened before. It would always be something so specific and it has happened multiple times, so it can't just be a strange coincidence. Edit. It's very reassuring to see all the stories of people experiencing the same thing, assures me that I'm not going insane, or maybe many others are just going insane with me. I won't be able to read them all as my phone's been blown up with them, but I'll try my best. 2 things. Each was witnessed by at least one other person and both were while driving. Once at a stop sign in a neighborhood. All of these little sparkles started swirling around in mid-air roughly 3 to 4 feet off the ground out of nowhere. The group of them were roughly 2 feet wide by 3 to 4 feet tall. It lasted 3 to 5 seconds and then they were gone. No one was around, and when I asked my passenger if he saw it too, he breathed a sigh of relief and said yes. We spoke about it a little more, but there is no reasonable explanation. The second happened when myself and 3 friends were driving down an empty country road. Very straight stretch. A man on a bike appeared. Someone said to watch out for him, so not to hit him, and then he disappeared. Our minds were blown to say the least. Just poof and he's gone. Every night I go to bed about 2 hours before my husband. I always wake up when he comes into the room. One night he was gaming with a friend and it was hours later I heard him sneak into the room and crawl across the floor so he could pop up and scare me. I felt the floor kind of shake and felt him bump clumsily against the side of the bed in the dark. I held out my hand and asked him not to scare me. I was already scared enough and begged him to just take my hand and come to bed. I couldn't see anything in the room, but knew he was there and just waited for him to jump up so I could move on and go back to sleep. That's when I heard him talking to his friend in the other room. I was frozen. I know there's sleep paralysis or lucid dreaming or something that explains this, but I would have sworn on my son's life that someone had crawled across the floor and jostled the bed. Eventually I worked out of the fear enough to grab my phone and text my husband to come in and turn on the lights and check under the bed. But holy shit, it boggles me how real it felt. Thank you to everyone who's confirmed sleep paralysis, kind of comforting to have that as the answer. Maybe if it happens again that knowledge will help. Also, it was likely inspired by watching Markiplier play Don't Open Your Eyes. Sleep with your doors shut, kids. You'll thank me later. 3 Scary Games number 36.